Scary story. The Shadow Slicer mission. Michael Harlan MANIAC serial killer. In the quiet suburbs of Evergreen Park, Illinois, where maple trees lined the streets and families gathered for backyard barbecues on warm summer evenings, no one suspected that evil lurked in the shadows. Michael Harlan was a man of average build, with a forgettable face that blended into crowds like a chameleon on a leaf. By day he worked as a mechanic at the local auto shop, fixing engines with steady hands and a polite smile. But when night fell, he transformed into something monstrous. The Shadow Slicer. A killer who stalked his victims under the cover of darkness, his blade gleaming like a sliver of moonlight. It all began 20 years ago, when Michael was just a boy of 15. His father, a stern military veteran, had drilled into him the importance of discipline and control. But one fateful night, during a heated argument, Michael's father struck him across the face, drawing blood. In a fit of rage, Michael grabbed a kitchen knife and plunged it into his father's chest. The blood sprayed across the linoleum floor, warm and sticky. And for the first time, Michael felt a rush of power that eclipsed his fear. He buried the body in the backyard under the old oak tree, and told everyone his father had run off with another woman. No one questioned it. After all, the man had a reputation for wandering. As the years passed, Michael's urges grew stronger. He started small, practicing on stray animals in the woods behind his house. The way their eyes widened in terror, the final twitch of life leaving their bodies, it was intoxicating. By the time he reached his 30s, he had honed his skills into an art form. He chose his victims carefully. Young women who reminded him of his absent mother, the one who had left him and his father when he was just a child. They were always alone, walking home from late shifts, or jogging in the early morning mist. His first human kill as the Shadow Slicer happened on a foggy October evening. Sarah Jenkins, a 22-year-old waitress at the diner on Main Street, was his target. She had long auburn hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall, and her laughter echoed through the restaurant like bells. Michael had watched her for weeks, learning her routine. She always took the shortcut through the alley behind the hardware store after closing time. That night, the fog rolled in thick from the nearby lake, muffling sounds and obscuring visions. Michael waited in the shadows, his heart pounding with anticipation. He wore black gloves and a hooded jacket, his face hidden behind a simple cloth mask. In his hand, he clutched a razor-sharp hunting knife, its blade etched with faint scratches from previous uses. Sarah's footsteps echoed softly on the pavement as she hurried through the alley, her purse slung over one shoulder. She hummed a tune under her breath, oblivious to the danger. Michael stepped out silently, his movements fluid like a predator. Before she could scream, he clamped a hand over her mouth and dragged her into the darkness behind a dumpster. "Please," she whimpered, her eyes wide with terror. "What do you want?" Michael didn't respond. He savored the fear in her voice, the way her body trembled against his. With a swift motion, he sliced across her throat, the knife cutting deep and clean. Blood poured out in a warm gush, soaking her uniform and pooling on the ground. She gasped, clutching at the wound, but it was futile. Life faded from her eyes within seconds, and Michael felt that familiar euphoria wash over him. He didn't stop there. To make it his signature, he carved intricate patterns into her skin, swirls and lines that resembled shadows, dancing in the wind. It was his way of claiming her, of turning death into art. He left her body propped against the wall, her eyes staring blankly at the stars peeking through the fog. The next morning, the town was in an uproar. The local newspaper splashed the headline across the front page: "Brutal murder in Evergreen Park. Victim slashed beyond recognition. Police Chief Harlan, no relation, thank goodness, vowed to catch the killer." But Michael was careful. He wore gloves, left no fingerprints, and disposed of his clothes in a distant landfill. Over the next few months, the Shadow Slicer struck again. His second victim was Emily Carter, a 19-year-old college student home for the holidays. She was out for a midnight run in the park, earbuds blasting pop music. Michael followed her from afar, his footsteps silent on the dew-kissed grass. When she paused to catch her breath near a cluster of trees, he pounced. Emily fought back fiercely, scratching at his arms and kicking wildly. But Michael was stronger, his grip like iron. He pinned her down and drove the knife into her abdomen, twisting it slowly to prolong her agony. Her screams were muffled by his hand, turning into gurgles as blood filled her lungs. Once she went limp, he etched his shadowy designs into her flesh, deeper this time, as if to embed his essence into her very soul. The police linked the murders immediately. The carvings were identical, elegant, almost beautiful in their macabre way. Rumors spread like wildfire. A ghost, a demon, or perhaps an escaped convict from the state prison 50 miles away. Michael reveled in the fear that gripped the town. Women stopped going out alone at night. Doors were locked earlier. Streetlights seemed dimmer in the face of such terror. But Michael grew bolder. His third victim was Lisa Thompson, a 25-year-old librarian, with a kind smile and glasses that perched on her nose. She lived alone in a small apartment, on the edge of town. Michael broke in through the back window, One stormy night, the thunder masking the sound of shattering glass, Lisa was reading in bed, a cozy blanket wrapped around her. She looked up just as Michael entered the room, his silhouette framed by lightning. "Who are you?" she gasped, dropping her book. "The Shadow Slicer," he whispered, his voice low and gravelly. It was the first time he had spoken to a victim, and the words sent a thrill through him. She tried to run, but he was faster. He tackled her to the floor, the knife flashing in the dim light. He slashed across her arms, as she flailed, then plunged it into her chest. Blood bubbled from her lips as she whispered, "Why?" "Because the shadows demand it," he replied, carving his patterns with deliberate strokes. This time he took a trophy, a lock of her hair, tied with a ribbon from her nightstand. The killings continued, each more elaborate than the last. By the time he reached his fifth victim, the FBI had been called in. Agent Rebecca Klein, a sharp-witted profiler from Quantico, arrived with her team. She was in her late 30s, with short cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing. "This guy's escalating," she told the local police. "The carvings are getting more complex. He's enjoying the attention." Michael watched the news coverage from his living room, a beer in hand. Seeing his work discussed by experts filled him with pride, but he knew he had to be careful. He varied his patterns slightly, chose victims from neighboring towns to throw them off. His sixth kill was in the nearby city of Oakwood. Vanessa Ruiz, a 28-year-old nurse, was walking home from the hospital after a double shift. The streets were empty, rain slicking the sidewalks. Michael ambushed her in a parking garage, his knife slicing through the air like a whisper. Vanessa screamed, echoing off the concrete walls. She managed to dial 911 on her phone before he knocked it away. "Help! There's a man with a knife," but by the time the police arrived, she was gone. Her body arranged in a pose that mimicked a shadow puppet, carvings twisting across her torso. The call was a breakthrough. The operator had heard Michael's voice in the background. "Shadows take you." It was enough for Agent Klein to start piecing together a profile. Male, mid-30s to 40s, local, possibly with a history of trauma. The shadows motif suggests a fascination with darkness, maybe from childhood abuse. Michael felt the net closing. He decided to lay low for a while, but the urges were too strong. 3 months later, he struck again. This time it was personal. He targeted Megan Foster, a 24-year-old reporter who had been covering the story relentlessly. She had written articles speculating about the Shadow Slicer's identity, even suggesting he might be someone ordinary, hiding in plain sight. Michael broke into her house at midnight. She was asleep, her laptop open on the bed with notes about the case. He woke her with a hand over her mouth. "You think you know me?" he hissed. Megan's eyes widened in recognition, or perhaps just terror. She struggled, but he overpowered her easily. As he raised the knife, she whispered, "Please, I have a family." "Everyone does," he said coldly, slashing deep. He took his time with the carvings, making them his masterpiece, swirling shadows that seemed to move in the lamplight. The murder of Megan sent shockwaves through the media. Protests erupted, demanding justice. Agent Klein doubled her efforts, interviewing everyone in town. She even stopped by the auto shop, questioning Michael about any suspicious customers. "You hear about this Shadow Slicer guy?" she asked casually. Michael nodded, wiping grease from his hands. "Scary stuff. Hope you catch him soon." Her eyes lingered on him a moment too long, but she moved on, emboldened by the close call. Michael planned his boldest kill yet. He chose the town's annual Halloween festival, where costumes and masks would hide his identity. His target, Julia Hayes, a 21-year-old high school teacher, dressed as a witch. The festival was crowded, lights strung between trees, laughter filling the air. Michael, disguised as a grim reaper, followed Julia as she wandered away from the crowd toward the woods for a smoke. He struck swiftly, dragging her into the underbrush. The knife flashed, blood mixing with the fallen leaves, but as he began carving, he heard voices, searchers looking for her. Panicking, he fled, leaving the body half-finished. It was his first mistake. The police found clues, a glove snagged on a branch, with traces of oil from the auto shop. Agent Klein connected the dots. "Michael Harlan," she said, staring at his photo. "The mechanic. His father disappeared years ago. Suspicious." They raided his house at dawn. In the basement, they found trophies, locks of hair, bloodied clothes, and a journal detailing every kill. Michael didn't resist. He smiled as they cuffed him. "The shadows will never die," he murmured. At trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses testified to his odd behavior. Experts analyzed his carvings as symbols of repressed rage. Michael was sentenced to life without parole, but his legend lived on. Whispers in Evergreen Park spoke of the Shadow Slicer returning one day, his blade eternal. Years later, on foggy nights, some swore they saw shadows moving unnaturally, slicing through the darkness. Was it imagination, or had Michael inspired copycats? The town would never be the same, forever haunted by the man who turned fear into art. Check out my long videos with scary stories. Visit my channel and watch. Subscribe to my channel. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Recommend it to your friends. Check out my videos, friend.